Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into the gentle light of the moon, that pale companion in our sky. Always there, yet never quite the same, quietly tugging on the oceans and slipping into our stories. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little slice of time. Now feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey into the story of the moon together. And if your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. Look up at the night sky. Somewhere above, glowing quietly, above rooftops, forests, deserts and oceans, is the moon. It doesn't shout like the sun. It doesn't blaze or blind. It simply lingers, a hush in the heavens, a silver whisper on the edge of darkness. And for all of human history, it has been with us. Every culture, every language, every lonely traveller who ever looked up has seen that same sphere, sometimes round and full like a lantern, sometimes a sliver, curved like a smile, other times hidden completely, as if it had taken a breath and slipped behind the curtain of the night. The moon is constant and yet always changing. Long before telescopes, before physics or calendars, even before writing, people noticed it. In deep caves painted with ochre and ash, dots and crescents mark the moon's passing. They weren't labelled, but the meaning was felt. Someone noticed the pattern. Someone watched the sky enough to trace a cycle, a rhythm, between light and darkness, between fullness and retreat. They might not have known what the moon was, but they knew what it did. It rose, it wandered, it returned, and that was enough. To early humans, the moon was a gentle timekeeper, a nightlight, a guardian in the sky. It lit the paths during nighttime hunts. It guided tides before the cause was known. And it pulled quietly at the imaginations of those gathered around fires, whispering stories that became myths, and myths that became memory. The moon has always meant more than just rock and shadow. It has been a mirror for the mind. To the Sumerians, it was the god Nana sailing across the sky in a boat of light. In ancient Egypt, it was Ea, the measurer of months. In China, Chang'e drank the elixir of immortality and floated up to the moon, where she still resides with her quiet rabbit companion. And in Japan, a princess from the moon came down to Earth and left behind only sorrow and beauty. Even as our modern world, filled with satellites and screens and light pollution, we still feel its pull. Maybe not consciously, maybe not every night, but something stirs when we see it. A pause, a breath. As if the moon were gently placing a hand on our shoulder and saying, "Skos, look." There is a comfort in knowing the moon we see tonight is the same moon Shakespeare saw, the same one that reflected off Viking oars, Roman rooftops, and the thatched huts of Neolithic villages, the same moon that drifted above deserts while early humans tracked animals across dust and stone. The moon ties us together, not by force, but by quiet presence. It doesn't change us with noise, but with rhythm. And the rhythm of the moon is everywhere once you notice it. It pulls the oceans, yes. But it also tugs softly at our days, our calendars, our sleep, our imaginations. We'll explore all of those things in time. But for now, it's enough just to feel the quiet miracle of it. There is a rock in the sky, circling us, showing the same face always. It reflects light we did not make. It casts shadows we did not design. And yet, it has become part of our language, our art, our dreams. It is easy to forget how extraordinary it is. The moon is not some generic space object. It is unusually large compared to its planet. strangely close. In fact, among the many moons in the solar system, ours is remarkably unique. But we'll get to that later. For now, let's stay in this moment. This quiet, shared space between day and night, between knowing and wondering. Imagine a child looking up at the moon, pointing to it as if to say, "There it is." And now imagine that the child could time travel, could step into any century, and still point to the same glow. The moon doesn't belong to any one culture, or even one time. It belongs to all of us, and yet it remains completely beyond us. We can touch it. Yes, astronauts have walked its surface, left footprints that will last for millions of years. But even then, after science landed there, after flags and footsteps, it still returns to us in poems and lullabies. That's the thing about the moon. It's not just a body in space, it's a feeling. So as we begin this journey, this gentle unfolding of how the moon has shaped our world, pause with me here. Let this first thought settle in like mist. You live on a planet that orbits a star, yes, but you also live with a moon, a companion that rose from fire, spun into light and never left your side. And tonight, it's waiting. Right outside your window, quiet, software familiar, just like always. The moon feels so gentle now, soft in the sky, serene in its silence, but its beginning was anything but quiet. It was not always there, drifting calmly above our heads like a cosmic lullaby. Once, long ago, there was no moon, only Earth, still young, still hot, still molten. A world fresh from its own birth, spinning fast and wild, cloaked in firestorms and crashing meteors. The solar system was a chaotic nursery back then. Planets were colliding, forming, absorbing, flinging debris across space like sparks from a blacksmith's hammer. And into this mess, something enormous arrived. Scientists call it Theia, a planet-sized body roughly the size of Mars, orbiting the early sun not far from Earth. One day, perhaps just a few million years after Earth formed, it struck. A cosmic collision so immense, so unimaginable, that it shattered both worlds. Theia and Earth collided not at a sharp angle like a glancing blow, but more like a slow-motion car crash that blurred the boundary between destruction and creation. Molten rock exploded into orbit. The outer layers of both bodies were torn off, flung into a halo of vaporized silicate and iron. Debris flew outward, some lost to space, some falling back down, but much of it gathered into a glowing ring around the wounded Earth. It didn't stay a ring for long. Over time, perhaps just a few hundred years, a blink in planetary time, that glowing ring began to gather, cool, and clump. Little pieces joined to form bigger ones. Gravity pulled the pieces together, like raindrops beading on glass. And then, somewhere in the middle of all that swirling chaos, the moon was born. Not as a sudden sphere, but as a process, a gathering, a settling of light and fire into form. And so, the moon began its life not as a quiet guardian, but as a child of violence, a survivor, a memory carved into orbit. What's extraordinary is not just the drama of this origin, but the uniqueness of what followed. Because the moon, our moon, is unlike most others in the solar system. Most moons are tiny compared to their planets. Captured asteroids, leftover fragments, odd rocks tugged into orbit by gravity. But Earth's moon is large, shockingly so. It's over a quarter the size of Earth in diameter. No other planet has a moon this big, relative to its own size. In fact, if you look at the Earth-Moon system from a distance, it doesn't look like a planet with a moon. It looks almost like a double planet. Two worlds orbiting a shared centre of gravity, twirling through space together. They hold each other, like dancers moving slowly in a vast and silent ballroom. And it's not just the moon's size that makes it special, it's also its distance. Close enough to look large in the sky, large enough to create total solar eclipses, where the moon can perfectly cover the sun's disk. No other known moon can do that. It's a celestial coincidence that borders on poetic. The sun is about 400 times farther from Earth than the moon, and also about 400 times larger. A ratio so precise, it allows for those rare and fleeting moments when the moon slides in front of the sun and turns day into night. But more than eclipses, the moon's proximity gives it power. It tugs on our oceans, pulls on our crust, steadies our seasons and slows our days. All because of that ancient impact. That moment of destruction that became, over time, the foundation of harmony. Without that crash, there would be no moon. And without the moon, well, Earth would still exist, yes. But it wouldn't be the same Earth. It would be a different planet. Wilder, unstable, perhaps even uninhabitable. The giant impact hypothesis, as it's formally known, is now the leading scientific explanation for the moon's origin. It explains the moon's composition. It's remarkably similar to Earth's mantle, but missing the heavier elements from the core, which likely sank into Earth's centre after the collision. It explains why the moon has such a small iron core and such similar isotopic signatures to Earth's own rocks. But even beyond the evidence, there's something quietly poetic about it. The idea that the moon is, in a way, part of Earth. Not a stranger from afar, but a sibling born from the same blow. A memory of the early chaos still orbiting us after billions of years. Somewhere in that ring of fire after the world was shattered, something chose to become whole again. It's strange to think that something so calming could come from something so cataclysmic. But maybe that's always been the way of things. The sky is full of quiet survivors. Stars are born from collapsing clouds, planets form from collisions, and moons, at least this one, come from a moment of violence softened by time. So when you next look up at the moon, remember, it wasn't always there. It rose from fire and became something still. It has no light of its own, but it reflects what falls on it. And somehow, that reflection has lit the paths of travellers, the pages of poets, and the thoughts of those who simply pause to wonder. The moon is not just a rock that orbits us. It is part of us, a fragment of Earth that chose to follow rather than drift away. And for over 4 billion years it has kept circling, wordless, constant, and beautifully scarred. Some relationships are quiet but enduring. The one between Earth and the moon is like that. Steady, patient, unhurried. It doesn't scream for attention or explode with drama. It just continues. A slow ballet choreographed over billions of years where neither partner rushes and every movement has meaning. If you've ever noticed that the moon always shows us the same face, if you've stared up and thought, haven't I seen those craters before? You're absolutely right. The moon doesn't rotate in the way we expect. It turns, yes, but just enough to always keep one hemisphere facing us. The far side, often mistakenly, called the dark side, isn't dark at all. It just faces away, hidden, mysterious, familiar only to spacecraft and Apollo astronauts. This one-facedness is no accident. It's called tidal locking, and it's the result of a very slow, very long conversation between gravity and time. Here's how it happened. In the beginning, after the moon formed from that fiery collision, it spun much faster. It wasn't shy. It twirled like a dancer on a newly lit stage, showing all sides of itself to the sky. But Earth is massive, and its gravity tugged on the moon's spinning body. That tug created bulges, slight stretches on the moon's surface, and as the moon rotated, those bulges didn't quite keep up with the spin. They lagged behind, creating a kind of gravitational friction. It's not the kind of friction you'd feel with your hands. This was more subtle, more patient, like a whispered correction each time the moon spun a little too far. Over millions of years, Earth's gravity slowed the moon's spin bit by bit, until it matched the time the moon takes to orbit Earth. Now the rotation and the orbit are synchronized. One spin per revolution. one side forever turned toward us. This is tidal locking, a cosmic agreement. I'll face you, always. And it goes both ways. The moon tugs on Earth too, raising ocean tides, yes, but also stretching the planet itself ever so slightly. Over time, Earth's rotation has also been slowing. Slowly, gently, the length of our days increases. Long ago, a day was just 6 hours. Now it's 24. Someday, far in the future, Earth may become tidally locked to the moon as well. From our surface, the moon would then hang motionless in the sky over one hemisphere, never rising, never setting, while the other side of Earth would never see it again. But don't worry, that won't happen for billions of years, and long before then, other cosmic events like the expanding sun will rewrite the story entirely. Still, it's fascinating to know that even now, in this very moment, our days are getting longer, so slowly that we don't notice, but measurably so. A gift from the moon, not of light, but of time. This mutual dance of orbits and spins, of gravity and resistance, is not just a technical curiosity, it's a source of harmony. Because this gentle synchronization brings stability. Tidal locking prevents wild fluctuations in the moon's movement. Earth, in turn, benefits from the predictability of its closest neighbour. And from a poetic point of view, it creates something we rarely notice but would deeply miss if it were gone. A familiar face in the sky. Every culture, every generation, has looked up at the same patterns on the moon. The same craters, the same dark Maria, the lunar seas that aren't really seas at all but frozen lava plains. In some places, people see a rabbit on the moon. In others, a face, a lady, a toad. But always they see something. Always the same features appear. That's the gift of tidal locking. A memory that doesn't change. A sky that doesn't forget. And yet the dance continues. The moon is not standing still. It's drifting away from us slowly, about 3.8 centimetres per year. The distance grows so imperceptibly that it will take millions of years to matter. But it's happening. Like a partner slowly backing away after a long embrace. The moon is leaving. Just a little. Not dramatically, not suddenly. But with the same quiet grace that marks all its movements. Why is it drifting away? It's the same tidal forces at play. As Earth rotates, it pulls the tidal bulge on the oceans slightly ahead of the moon's orbit. That bulge pulls back on the moon, giving it a tiny forward nudge. That nudge moves the moon outward. In return, Earth's own spin slows down. A trade. Distance for time. It's a beautiful exchange, really. A long, slow barter between sky and sea. This entire gravitational dialogue may sound abstract, but its consequences are real and woven into our everyday lives. Without this dance, without the moon's slow, balancing presence, Earth would be more chaotic. Its spin might be faster, its tilt less stable, its days shorter, its seasons erratic. But with the moon, there is rhythm, there is calm, there is a face in the sky that never turns away. And when you look up at it tonight, or tomorrow or next week, you're looking at a moon that's not just orbiting, it's remembering, it's keeping its promise to face you, no matter where you are, no matter what year it is. A celestial partner in a dance that's older than any mountain, deeper than any sea. You don't need to understand orbital mechanics to feel it. Just step outside and look. That same face, steady, cratered, pale, is there again. And it always will be, for a while longer. The days feel so ordinary, don't they? We wake, we work, we wander, we rest, and then the world begins again. 24 hours, sunrise, sunset, a rhythm so deeply stitched into life that we hardly question it. But Earth's rotation, our day, the pace of our existence, isn't fixed or guaranteed. It is the result of a cosmic balancing act, one that has been slowly unfolding for billions of years. And at the centre of that act, again and always, is the moon. It might seem strange to think of something as massive as a planet being influenced by something else, especially something as quiet as the moon. But in the tug-of-war between Earth and its lone satellite, subtlety wins. Through patience and persistence, the moon has reshaped not only the face of the sky, but the very nature of time on Earth. In the earliest days of our planet, long before continents had names, long before anything walked or swam, the Earth spun much faster than it does now. A day wasn't 24 hours, it was more like 6. The world turned quickly, wrapped in thick clouds and volcanic breath, spinning with such speed that a sunrise might arrive just a few hours after the last had set. It was a planet in a rush, but the moon slowed it down. How? Through the ocean. The moon's gravity pulls on Earth's oceans, creating bulges, those familiar tides we see on coastlines, washing in and out like the breath of the sea. But the Earth isn't standing still as this happens, it's rotating. So the tidal bulge isn't directly under the moon, it gets pulled slightly ahead of it. And because of that, the ocean's gravitational pull tugs back on the moon, while also pulling against the spin of the Earth itself. That resistance, small but constant, acts like a brake. It slows our planet's rotation, minute by minute over millions of years. It's not something we feel. You won't wake up tomorrow to find that the day has grown longer, but across the ages it has. Fossil corals and tidal rhythmites, sedimentary layers laid down in rhythm with the tides, show that around 400 million years ago, days were about 21 hours long, and there were more than 400 days in a year. The Earth hasn't stopped spinning, of course, but it has settled into a slower, calmer pace, a pace that allowed life to grow in complexity. That gave creatures time to rise with the sun and rest under the stars. That made space for the deep rituals of sleep, hunger, thought, and memory. The moon gave us that time, not in a single moment but drop by drop like water wearing down stone. And this slowing isn't just about clocks. It changes the very nature of how energy moves across the planet. Faster rotation would mean stronger winds, more violent weather systems, shorter atmospheric cycles. A 6-hour day would compress temperature swings, make nights frigid and mornings abrupt. Plants would need to adapt to faster light cycles. Animals would evolve differently. Human culture, if it ever arose, might be built around a different sense of urgency, a quicker tempo, a shorter breath. Instead, we have long days and longer nights. We have evenings and afternoons and the lingering calm of dusk. We have time to cook, to talk, to rest. We have the space between things. The moon didn't just give us tides, it gave us interludes, and that gift keeps giving. Today, the Earth continues to slow, though imperceptibly. Scientists use atomic clocks and laser measurements of the moon's position to confirm it. We occasionally add leap seconds to our timekeeping to adjust for Earth's slight deceleration. It's a small reminder that nothing is truly fixed, not even time. What's beautiful is that this process connects us to every creature that's ever walked this planet. The trilobites in the Cambrian seas, the ferns of the Devonian forests, the feathered dinosaurs watching sunsets from ancient plains. They all lived under a different pace, a shorter day, a younger sky. The moon shaped their time too, and now it shapes ours. It's easy to think of the moon as distant, as merely something we observe, but in truth it's interactive. It pulls on us. We pull back. This mutual gravitational relationship isn't just about motion, it's about identity. Without the moon, Earth's rhythm would be different, and if Earth's rhythm changed, so would everything on it. The moon is not only a guardian of tides and a mirror of sunlight, it's a sculptor of time, a slow, silent hand guiding the spin of the planet, softening its momentum and gently drawing out the day. And we don't usually notice it. We don't often pause to thank it. But we live in the world the moon helped make, a world with mornings that stretch, evenings that linger, and a tempo that suits life as we know it. That quiet satellite has shaped not just the oceans and the tilt of the Earth, but the space we use to think, to breathe, and to be. So the next time you check the clock or feel the warmth of a long afternoon sun, you might imagine the moon, far above you, still pulling gently at the tides, still slowing the Earth one heartbeat at a time, not with noise, not with pressure, but with a rhythm so slow, so quiet, that you can only feel it if you listen across eons. Time, it turns out, has a tide, and the moon is the one who stirs it. You may not think much about the angle of the Earth. It isn't something you feel under your feet or notice as you go about your day, but that slight lean, about 23.5 degrees off vertical, is quietly responsible for almost everything we understand about the passage of time, the waxing and waning of seasons, the length of our days and nights, the reliability of spring after winter. That gentle tilt gives Earth its rhythm, and like so many other things, it's the moon that keeps it steady. Imagine Earth without its tilt, and everything becomes strange. Without a lean, we would have no seasons at all. Every day would be the same length, with the sun rising and setting at the same point on the horizon forever. Some parts of the world would be locked in endless heat, others in eternal cold. But imagine the opposite. If that tilt weren't stable, if it shifted wildly as it might without the moon, our planet doesn't sit perfectly upright like a spinning top. It leans, like a person looking thoughtfully toward the horizon, and that lean wobbles, ever so slightly, in a slow circular motion called axial precession, a kind of long, slow nod of the head that takes about 26,000 years to complete a single circle. But the tilt itself, the 23.5 degrees, has been remarkably stable for billions of years. Not by accident, but because the moon has been holding it in place. Here's how it works. Earth's equator bulges slightly due to its rotation, just enough to give it an equatorial waistline. The gravitational pull of the moon acts on that bulge, helping to stabilize Earth's axial tilt. It's like a subtle hand on a spinning globe, not stopping it, but preventing it from wobbling too far in either direction. The result is that Earth's seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter, occur with gentle consistency. Our climate zones, agricultural cycles, and even evolutionary patterns depend on this dependable tilt. Without the moon, the story might be very different. Without that gravitational stabilizer, simulations show that Earth's tilt could vary chaotically, from nearly upright to as much as 85 degrees. That's not a minor shift. It's a planetary upheaval. Imagine the poles tipping toward the sun, where once frozen regions would become scorching, while equatorial zones could freeze over. Seasons would swing dramatically from decade to decade, and the climate would become deeply unpredictable. Forests could become deserts, and tundras might bloom with tropical rain, only to freeze again a few thousand years later. It wouldn't just be the land and weather that changed. Life itself would have to adapt, again and again. Evolution might proceed not as a slow unfolding, but as a desperate scramble for survival. This isn't just theory, it's a reality we can glimpse by looking at Mars. Mars, our red neighbour, has no large moon to anchor its tilt. Its tiny moons, Phobos and Deimos, are too small and too close to help, and as a result, Mars experiences wild shifts in its axial tilt, fluctuating between 10 and 60 degrees over long periods of time. That instability is believed to be a major reason Mars lacks long-term climate zones and may struggle to retain surface water or support life as we know it. So when we talk about Earth seasons, we're not just talking about weather, we're talking about the quiet success story of a planet that found balance, a rare balance, through the help of a moon that knows just how to pull. The moon, in this way, becomes not just a passive observer, but an active guardian of climate stability. It allowed Earth to settle into long-term environmental patterns. These, in turn, gave rise to migration cycles in animals, predictable flowering seasons in plants, and even the agricultural rhythms that humans would eventually build their civilizations upon. The predictability of seasons led to planting and harvest, to food storage and calendars, to the first markings of time not in days or moons, but in years. The moon helped secure not just Earth's orbit, but the future of human history. And here, we start to see the moon as something more than a rock in the sky. It becomes a silent architect of habitability, offering the gift of predictable change. Seasons shift, yes, but in ways that can be anticipated, recorded, prepared for. We know when winter is coming. We expect the flowers to bloom. We trust that summer will arrive. That trust is not instinctive. It's cosmic. There's something profoundly comforting in that. In knowing the world turns in a steady pattern, not by chance, but through the quiet work of forces we cannot feel directly. The moon is often described as distant, cold, or lifeless, but its influence reaches into the soil, the wind, and the blood of migrating birds. It whispers stability into the very foundation of life. Imagine a world where the seasons betrayed you, where snow came in midsummer and spring vanished for decades. That world is still Earth, but an Earth without its moon. And yet, here we are, with apple trees that blossom in April, with monarch butterflies that know when to begin their journey, with children who grow up learning the rhythm of autumn leaves, with skies that redden in October and forests that wake in March. All because our planet leans just a little, and the moon keeps it leaning just enough. If you've ever walked along the shore, you've likely seen the tide coming in or pulling back. Maybe you watched it quietly from a rock as the water lapped at your feet, or listened to its steady rhythm from under a blanket on the sand. The ocean moves, not in sudden lunges, but in deep, slow inhalations. It breathes, and the moon is the one who tells it when to do so. Tides may feel like background music to the coastal world, but they are far more than scenery. They are one of the most ancient and continuous processes on Earth, pulsing across the planet every day without fail. And though many forces influence them, including the sun and wind and Earth's rotation, it is the moon that provides the strongest, most reliable pull. The mechanism is surprisingly elegant. The moon's gravity pulls on Earth's oceans, creating a bulge of water on the side closest to it. At the same time, there's another bulge on the far side of the Earth. Not because the moon is pulling the water outward, but because it pulls the planet itself more strongly than the ocean on the far side, creating a kind of slingshot effect. These two bulges form the high tides. As Earth rotates, different regions pass through those bulges, resulting in the familiar rise and fall of the sea that coastal dwellers have watched for millennia. In most places, this cycle occurs twice a day. 2 high tides and 2 low tides, each one governed by the moon's position above or beyond the horizon. It's a simple interaction, gravity and water, but it generates something astonishingly powerful. The moon lifts trillions of tons of ocean every single day. It shapes coastlines, moves sediment, refreshes ecosystems, and creates dynamic environments where life thrives. And not just life as we know it now, but perhaps even life as it began. Tidal zones. Those in-between places that are sometimes sea, sometimes shore, are among the most biologically rich habitats on Earth. They are places of constant change, where creatures must adapt to both drowning and drying out, to sun and salt, to predators from both land and sea. Yet it is in these very contradictions that evolution does some of its most creative work. But long before crabs scuttled between the rocks or birds probed the sand for clams, the moon may have played a quieter, more fundamental role. Some scientists believe that life itself, meaning the first true life, the leap from chemistry to biology, was sparked in tidal pools governed by the moon. Here's the idea. In the early Earth, the moon orbited much closer, and tides were more extreme. They swept inland and retreated in broad, sweeping motions. Pools formed and dried, then filled again. Molecules washed ashore and baked in the sun, then were submerged once more. This cycling, wet to dry to wet again, created the kind of chemistry that still escapes most laboratory conditions. One candidate molecule is RNA, which plays a crucial role in all life today. RNA can store genetic information, like DNA, but it can also act as a catalyst, like a protein. In a world without cells, without membranes or organs, RNA may have been the first self-replicating structure, essentially the first thing that could copy itself. But it needed just the right environment to form, not too wet, not too dry. It needed cycles, it needed rhythm, and the moon provided it. Even today you can see the legacy of those cycles in the behaviour of marine life. Corals spawn in sync with the full moon. Horseshoe crabs crawl ashore during spring tides to lay their eggs in moist sand. Sea turtles across generations return to the same beaches, guided by lunar cues. Fish feed differently depending on moonlight. Even some birds time their migrations and nesting to match lunar phases. There's a sense, though we don't often name it, that the ocean listens to the moon, that it responds not only in depth, but in timing, that the water isn't just pulled, but called. And it's not just about biology, it's about balance. Tides stir nutrients from the seafloor, they aerate shallow waters, they flush estuaries and marshlands, providing oxygen and food to fish nurseries. Many coastal ecosystems depend on the regular motion of the tides, and many human cultures have lived in harmony with them. Fishermen for thousands of years have watched the moon to decide when to cast their nets. Farmers along river deltas have used tidal patterns to irrigate crops. In places like the Bay of Fundy, the tides rise and fall over 16 metres, more than 50 feet, reshaping the land each day like slow sculpture. Without the moon, things would still move, but more softly, less urgently. The sun also causes tides, but they're far weaker, about half as strong. Without the lunar tug, tides would shrink, and those dynamic intertidal zones would narrow or vanish. The ecosystems that depend on them might disappear. The processes that distribute heat and nutrients across the ocean could falter, and the spark that first gave rise to life, it might never have struck. We often think of the moon as distant, but its pull touches every grain of sand along the shore, every shell, every ripple, every small fish darting in and out of the rocks. The moon doesn't just reflect sunlight, it animates oceans. So if you find yourself by the sea one night and you hear the waves rolling in, know that it's more than wind or weather. It's a message from above. The moon is speaking in gravity, and the earth is answering in water. The two have been having this conversation for over 4 billion years, a rhythm older than memory, a breath older than thought, and it still continues, out there in the dark and here in your heart. If you could travel back in time, far, far back, before the first forests, before the first fish, before even the first cells, you wouldn't find much that looks familiar. The Earth, some 4 billion years ago, was a place of extremes. Its surface was hot, its skies filled with volcanic haze, its oceans restless and rich with dissolved minerals. And scattered along the edges of those early seas, in places where the tides crept in and out with the moon's pull, were small, shimmering pools. To the eye, they may have looked like puddles, temporary, shallow, easily forgotten. But within them, something extraordinary was beginning. These were the first laboratories, not ones filled with glass or metal, but with heat and water, sunlight and salt. Here, in these ever-changing boundaries between land and sea, between wet and dry, molecules danced, and some of them eventually learned to copy themselves. Life, as we understand it, may have begun in the moon's shadow. Tidal pools are unique places. Unlike the deep sea or the wide ocean, they are small enough to change quickly. The sun can warm them, evaporation can concentrate them. As tides recede, pools are left exposed to air, their water levels falling, their ingredients left behind in increasingly dense solutions, and when the tide returns, it stirs everything back up again, replenishing moisture and mixing in new materials from the sea. This constant cycle, drying, heating, rehydrating, is thought to be essential for certain types of chemical reactions that don't happen easily in water alone. In particular, it may have been key for forming long chains of molecules like RNA, a central player in theories about life's earlier steps. Unlike DNA, which is stable and stores information in a double helix, RNA is more flexible. It can both store genetic instructions and catalyse reactions, acting like a primitive enzyme. Some researchers believe that before there were cells, before there were even membranes or organelles, there was an RNA world, a collection of self-replicating RNA molecules, capable of evolution in their own simple way. But RNA doesn't form easily. It needs the right conditions, neither too dry nor too wet, neither too hot nor too cold, and that's where the moon, indirectly, may have come in. With the moon orbiting much closer than it does today, the tides on early Earth would have been far more extreme, sweeping great distances inland, then rushing back out, leaving pools in their wake. These pools would dry under the young sun, their contents concentrating into thicker and thicker soups of organic compounds. Then the next tide would arrive, dissolving everything once more and spreading it around. It was, in effect, a planetary scale cycle of mixing and refinement, a vast lunar-paced experiment repeated day after day for millions of years. In this slow rhythm, molecules could begin to link into chains. Some of those chains might fold in ways that let them interact with others. A few might even start copying themselves, not perfectly, but well enough to persist and improve. And from those fragile beginnings, life may have emerged. It's humbling to think that something so massive, the moon, with all its gravitational strength and orbital stability, could influence something so delicate as a strand of RNA. But that's often how life works. Vast forces creating narrow windows, enormous patterns allowing for tiny, improbable sparks. Of course, no one knows for certain how life began. There are other theories, other environments. Some scientists point to hydrothermal vents deep beneath the ocean, where minerals and heat form natural chimneys that could have incubated early life. Others imagine reactions on clay surfaces or in volcanic lakes. But the tidal pool theory holds a special poetic resonance. It connects the pull of the moon with the birth of everything that has ever lived. It turns a cycle of evaporation and flooding into the stage for the greatest drama imaginable. The transition from non-life to life. And if that happened, even if only once, then every living thing on Earth is, in some sense, a child of the tides. That connection didn't end when life began. Even today, many marine organisms live and die by the moon's rhythm. Horseshoe crabs, whose ancestors are nearly 500 million years old, still emerge from the sea in synchrony with the lunar cycle to lay their eggs on beaches. Coral reefs engage in mass spawning events during full moons, releasing clouds of eggs and sperm into the water in breathtaking biological choreography. Plankton, some of the most ancient creatures on Earth, migrate vertically in the ocean depending on the moon's phase. Even humans, with our artificial lights and clocks and calendars, are not entirely separate. Some studies suggest that human sleep patterns, menstrual cycles, and even mood fluctuations may still be gently swayed by the moon, like flowers turning subtly toward the light. It is as if the memory of those tidal pools remains in us, echoed not in words but in the chemistry of our blood, which shares its salinity with ancient seas, and in the pulse of our hearts, which beat in rhythms we did not choose but somehow still trust. And so we return to those first shallow pools, flickering in the dawn of Earth's story. We imagine them shimmering beneath a sky both alien and familiar, under a moon that looked far larger and brighter than it does now. The moon didn't create life, but it may have given life a place to begin, a stage, a rhythm, a breath. And once life began, the moon didn't stop. It stayed nearby, circling endlessly, nudging the oceans, marking the months, whispering to everything that came after, keep going. Even now, when you stand near the shore and watch the tide pull away, or see the moon rising over still water, that ancient cycle continues. The same one that may have brought the first spark to life's long fire. The moon has always been a quiet force, but perhaps its greatest act was not lighting the night or controlling the tides. Perhaps it was offering a place, a pause, a pool for life to take its very first breath. There's a rhythm inside every living thing. You may not hear it, but it's there, beating gently beneath feathers, scales, shells, or skin. It isn't the rhythm of a heart or lungs, though those matter too. It's something deeper, something quieter, a clock that doesn't tick, but still keeps time. And for many creatures on Earth, that clock is tuned ever so slightly to the moon. We often think of the moon's influence as purely gravitational, as something that moves water, but not life. But nature doesn't draw lines so strictly. The same force that shapes tides also shapes behaviour, not with commands, but with suggestion, not with control, but with invitation. The moon doesn't tell animals what to do. It offers a pattern, and many of them listen. Consider the coral reefs. On warm nights in tropical waters, something extraordinary happens. In perfect synchrony, sometimes across hundreds of kilometres, corals release clouds of eggs and sperm into the sea. For a few short minutes, the water becomes milky, luminous, filled with the beginning of life. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the sea stills again. What's astonishing isn't just the beauty of the event, but its timing. These mass-spawning events don't happen randomly. They're orchestrated with precision, and one of the key cues is the full moon. Corals have no eyes to see it, no hands to mark a calendar, but still, they know. The changing light, the subtle gravitational shifts, they track it all, and they respond with one of the most delicate and synchronized acts in the natural world. They are not alone. Horseshoe crabs, ancient creatures whose lineage stretches back hundreds of millions of years, also follow the moon. Along certain shores during the spring high tides, the spring tides that happen when the moon and sun align, thousands of these creatures crawl from the sea and onto the sand to lay their eggs. The timing is everything. The high tides offer just enough time and moisture for the crabs to bury their eggs before the sea retreats. Then, when the water returns, the hatchlings are carried back into the ocean on the same moon-guided tide. Sea turtles follow similar cues. Females haul themselves ashore under cover of night, often during a full moon, guided not only by memory but by the way moonlight glints off the water and shapes the coastline. Later, their hatchlings emerge, looking for that same silvery reflection to guide them back to the waves. Fish, too, have their lunar rituals. Some species spawn during new or full moons. Others feed more actively when the moon is high. The behaviour varies, but the pattern remains. The moon is a quiet conductor, waving its gravitational baton, and the sea responding in kind. But the moon's influence doesn't end at the shore. Birds, those high-flying, sharp-eyed travellers, use the moon in migration. Some species wait for specific lunar phases to begin their journeys. Others navigate by the moon's position in the night sky, using it like a compass. Insects time their activity with moonlight. Even plants, it's now believed, may adjust their growth patterns to lunar cues, responding to gravitational fluctuations in ways we're only beginning to understand. The deeper we look, the more we realise how many species move not only through space, but through time. Moon time. And humans? We're not as far removed as we might think. Our ancestors certainly knew the moon as a timekeeper. Before clocks and calendars, people planted and harvested by it. They scheduled festivals and rites of passage by its phases. They believed in many cases that the moon influenced health, sleep, fertility, even madness. The word lunatic comes from the Latin luna, meaning moon, and while modern science doesn't support every myth about lunar influence, some connections remain intriguing. Menstrual cycles, for instance, average about 29.5 days, the same as a lunar month. Some researchers have found weak but curious correlations between lunar phases and human sleep patterns, with some studies suggesting people may sleep slightly less or have altered sleep quality during full moons. The results are debated, but the interest remains. We may not consciously notice the moon anymore, especially in cities where light pollution washes it out, but our bodies, in subtle ways, might still remember. Even moods can shift. Not dramatically perhaps, but gently, like a tide that rises a little higher or recedes a little further. And whether it's biological or psychological, cultural or chemical, the effect remains part of our story. We look at the moon and feel something. Sometimes awe, sometimes loneliness, sometimes peace. Something moves in us when the moon is full and still, watching from above. It's comforting to know that life isn't purely driven by survival or instinct, but also by pattern, by a deep sensitivity to the rhythms of the world. The moon offers one of the oldest and most reliable rhythms in existence. Not only does it shape the water, but it shapes the time inside us. The time between migrations, between spawning, between awakenings. In this sense, the moon is a kind of gentle metronome for the biosphere, one that keeps the beat, softly and endlessly, whether or not we notice. It doesn't command attention, it doesn't impose, it simply exists, a faithful presence, and many who live on Earth, knowingly or not, have built their lives around its silent rhythm. So the next time you notice the moon, full and glowing or a sliver in the sky, you might think not only of tides and shadows, but of the millions of hearts and cells and instincts that are quietly adjusting to its light, of turtles finding their way to the sea, of coral preparing to bloom, of crabs and birds and even humans turning their lives toward the pull of something steady and unseen. There is a clock in the sky, and we all, in some way, keep its time. Before electricity, before gas lamps, before even the flickering torches of human hands, there was only one true light in the night sky: the moon. The stars were scattered and cold, beautiful but distant. The moon, by contrast, was present. It moved across the sky, bright enough to cast shadows, soft enough not to blind. It was the only lamp the natural world had known for millions of years, and for early humans, it was the difference between darkness and possibility. With moonlight came a new kind of time. Not the hours of day, structured by the sun, but the space between. The hours when the sun had set and the world didn't disappear. The moon allowed for activity after sunset, not just out of necessity, but for reflection, for rhythm, and eventually for culture. Imagine a night in the deep past. There is a village, or a campsite, or a gathering of people under the stars. The fire has burned low, the animals have gone quiet, but the moon rises, painting the world in silver. You can see the outlines of trees, the shapes of sleeping bodies, the curve of the hills in the distance. And in that light, cool, pale and gentle, people begin to speak. They tell stories, they hum songs, they pass down memories. This wasn't just a convenience, it was a transformation. Moonlight extended the day, gently, without scorching heat or danger. It gave humans the opportunity to imagine, to reflect, to wonder. It was not so bright as to reveal everything. There were still mysteries, but it was just enough to let dreams form a bridge between waking and sleep. In many ancient societies, the moon was deeply embedded in both ritual and agriculture. Farmers planted and harvested by its phases. Hunters tracked prey at night using its glow. Fishermen relied on the tides and the moon above to predict when the catch would be best. But beyond survival, the moon began to shape festivals, stories, calendars, and worship. Lunar calendars were some of the first tools humans used to mark time. The lunar cycle, roughly 29.5 days, was consistent and observable. You could watch the moon grow, shrink, vanish, and return. This cycle became a natural unit for planning. Entire systems of belief and ceremony were tied to its phases. In ancient Mesopotamia, priests tracked the moon's phases to determine holy days. The Islamic calendar is based entirely on lunar cycles. The Jewish calendar blends lunar and solar systems, ensuring that certain feasts always fall under a full moon. In Hindu traditions, full moon nights, Purnima, are times of fasting, meditation, and sacred storytelling. In many East Asian cultures, the full moon marks reunion. The Mid-Autumn Festival in China and Vietnam celebrates the harvest, family, and the beauty of the moon itself. Even in modern times, people across the world pause to admire a full moon, to take photographs, to feel, even briefly, a connection to something enduring. But the influence of moonlight goes beyond religion or calendars. It shaped the way people thought about night itself. Without the moon, night was truly dark. It could be dangerous. Predators roamed. Paths became treacherous. The flicker of a fire was fragile, limited. But under a full moon, the world reopened. Travellers moved. Lovers met. Dancers gathered in open spaces. Poets whispered to one another in the quiet. Night was no longer an interruption. It became a time of its own. And in some ways, moonlight even encouraged introspection. Unlike the sun, which demands wakefulness, productivity, and action, the moon does not ask for anything. It simply appears. It allows you to sit, to feel, to wonder. Many cultures associate the moon with the feminine, with emotion, with mystery, not because of superstition, but because of its nature. It does not blaze, it glows. It does not rush, it rises slowly. It does not overwhelm, it invites. This emotional presence helps shape not only myth, but art. Painters like Caspar David Friedrich created moonlit landscapes to evoke solitude and awe. Van Gogh captured the dreamy magic of starlit skies that owed much to the moon's quiet glow. Poets like Li Bai, in ancient China, wrote to the moon as if to an old friend, companion of the lonely, the traveller, the exile. In many languages, the moon became a metaphor for longing. A lover separated by distance might gaze at the moon and know the other was doing the same. In lullabies, the moon watches over children as they sleep. In stories, it becomes a mirror of the soul, bright but scarred, far but familiar. Even today, in an age of smartphones and city lights, people still feel that pull. A full moon still turns heads. It still draws people to windows. Even surrounded by artificial brightness, the moon manages to hold attention, not through brilliance, but through presence. And in this way, it continues to do what it has always done. It extends the night, but gently. It turns darkness into a softer version of itself. It reminds us that not everything needs to be lit to be seen. It helped humans step into the shadows, not with fear, but with curiosity. So if you've ever taken a walk on a moonlit night and felt calmer, slower, or strangely connected to something older than yourself, that's not an illusion. That's the echo of thousands of generations who shaped their lives by this same gentle light. It is the moon, still glowing, still watching, still showing the world how to sleep with its eyes open. Before clocks ticked and calendars flipped, before anyone spoke of minutes or weeks or deadlines, there was the moon. High above, always changing and always returning, the moon offered humanity its very first way to measure time. Long before we charted the stars with mathematics or carved notches into stone, we could simply look up and count. One waxing, one waning, one cycle, 1 month, or rather 1 month. The moon cycle, from new to full and back again, takes about 29.5 days. It's precise enough to track without instruments and consistent enough to build a system around. Across cultures and continents, ancient peoples turned to the moon not just to light their nights, but to organise their lives. The Babylonians, among the earliest known astronomers, watched the moon's progress across the sky and divided the year into 12 lunar months. Their priests recorded eclipses and alignments, linking them to the rhythms of kings and harvests, births and omens. In ancient Egypt, the lunar calendar was used alongside the solar one. The moon marked religious festivals and seasonal events. Each month began with the first visible crescent, an act that tied time to sight, not abstraction. It made time feel alive, anchored to the sky rather than to the page. In China, the moon guided the timing of traditional festivals that persist to this day. Festivals like the Mid-Autumn Festival, when families gather to admire the full moon and offer mooncakes in celebration of reunion and completeness. The Islamic calendar remains purely lunar to this day. Each month begins with the sighting of the new crescent, making the calendar about 12 days shorter than the solar year. This means that sacred months, such as Ramadan, shift through the seasons over decades, carrying a beautiful, subtle reminder that sacred time is mobile, not fixed. Lunar calendars don't always match the sun's seasons. That mismatch eventually led to the invention of lunisolar calendars, which added extra months to realign moon and sun, like leap years for moons. But the core idea remained. The moon is the timekeeper of cycles, not just days and hours, but emotional time, biological time, cultural time. You can imagine what this must have felt like to early humans, watching the moon grow from a sliver to a glowing disk, then slowly disappear again. That rhythm didn't just help with crops or tides, it became a heartbeat in the sky. One you could live by, and live by it we did. In many societies, the moon wasn't just a passive calendar, it was a living clock. Hunters timed their travels by the light of the full moon, when prey could be more easily tracked. Farmers planted and harvested according to the moon's phases, believing that certain crops fared better when sown under waxing or waning light. Even today, traditions persist. Almanacs still offer moon phase planting guides. Fishermen check lunar tables to determine when the tides will rise highest, or fish will be most active. Moon cycles continue to influence behaviour in the natural world, so why wouldn't they still echo, even faintly, in us? And then, of course, there's language. The word month comes directly from moonth, a linguistic fossil that reminds us of how deeply lunar cycles are embedded in human consciousness. Many cultures had similar associations. In Old English, mona meant moon, and moneth meant month. In Latin, menses, month, is linked to materi, meaning to measure. In Sanskrit, masa means both moon and month. To live by the moon was not superstition. It was practical poetry, a blending of observation, need, and awe. You might wonder why the moon had such a deep impact compared to the sun. After all, the sun defines the day. But the sun is too constant. It rises and sets with little change, offering brightness but few clues to the passing of longer time. The stars shift over seasons, but they are many and abstract. The moon, by contrast, is singular, near, and dynamic. It changes every night. You can watch it evolve, you can feel its rhythm, and that rhythm invites you to mark your own. Birthdays, festivals, periods of reflection or celebration. Many of these were first tied not to fixed dates, but to lunar phases. A child might be born under a full moon, a marriage arranged for the third waxing, a harvest celebrated under the moon's fullest gaze. Even the concept of cyclical time, time as a circle, not a line, owes much to the moon. Its visible return to the same shape each month planted a seed in the human mind. The idea that things come back, that endings can also be beginnings. That time is not just forward-moving but repeating, comforting, renewing. It's a gentle kind of time, the moon's time. It doesn't rush. It doesn't tick loudly. It slides through the sky like breath, marking the world in silver. It tells you that things take time, that change is constant but predictable, that darkness comes but so does return. Today we live by minutes and seconds. We chase deadlines and count days, but deep down in the quiet parts of our minds, the moon's calendar still lingers. You might feel it when you look up and see a crescent hanging like a promise in the sky, or when the full moon makes your room brighter than usual and you lie awake not knowing why, or when you feel something beginning again, not because a new month started on paper, but because something in you turned with the moon. Time, after all, is not only what we measure, it's what we notice, and the moon has always made us notice. If the sun is the ruler of the day, sharp, commanding and bright, the moon is the whisper of the night, softer, more ambiguous, often gazing down through clouds or haze. It does not declare, it suggests, it doesn't reveal, it invites. And in this gentle ambiguity, cultures across the world have found a canvas for meaning, projecting hopes, fears, myths, and metaphors onto that shifting disk in the sky. The moon has been many things to many people. A goddess, a god, a messenger, a mirror, a madness, a mystery. Where the sun brought clarity, the moon brought questions. Where the sun governed survival, the moon governed story. In ancient Greece, the moon was Selene, a radiant goddess who rode across the sky in a silver chariot pulled by white horses. Every night she followed her path without fail, her pale face watching over lovers, poets, and the sleepless. Her Roman counterpart was Lunar, and her name echoes through languages even now: lunar phases, lunacy, the lunette. In India, the moon is Chandra, a god both regal and gentle, associated with coolness, emotion, and the ebb and flow of life. In Hindu tradition, Chandra is not just a celestial body but a planetary deity, one whose cycles influence the timing of rituals, the health of crops, and even the temperament of individuals. In Japan, the moon is Tsukuyomi, a mysterious and somewhat distant deity born from the right eye of the creator god, Izanagi. Unlike the sun goddess Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi is cold and removed, a reflection perhaps of the moon's silent and solitary path through the sky. In ancient Egypt, the moon was Ea, a deity of time and cycles, later absorbed into the image of Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing. Thoth, with his ibis head and crescent moon crown, was believed to have invented writing and to govern the rhythm of days and nights, a reminder that knowledge and lunar observation were often intertwined. These deities, spread across continents and centuries, share more than names. They reflect a universal human impulse to see in the moon not just a light, but a presence, something that moves but never speaks, something that feels alive, even if it cannot respond, and with presence comes symbolism. The moon has long been associated with the feminine, not just in gendered mythologies, but in cycles. Many cultures notice the similarity between the lunar cycle and the average menstrual cycle, drawing connections between the moon and fertility, birth, renewal. In this way, the moon became a symbol not just of time, but of becoming, of change that is not chaotic, but rhythmic. It is also a symbol of madness. The word lunacy stems directly from the Latin luna. For centuries, people believed that the full moon could disturb the mind, provoke violence, or stir deep irrationality. The idea appears in Shakespeare, in medical treatises, in folklore from Europe to Asia. And while modern science has found little evidence that the full moon causes mental illness, the association persists, perhaps because moonlight shifts the world just enough to make it feel other. A field under moonlight is not the same field by day, a face illuminated by. The moon looks gentler or more haunted. The familiar becomes strange, and the imagination begins to wander. In some tales, the moon is not merely a symbol, but a location. There is the Chinese legend of Chang'e, the moon goddess who drank an elixir of immortality and floated away to the heavens, where she now lives alone with a jade rabbit. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, children are told that they can see her silhouette on the moon if they look closely. In many indigenous cultures of the Americas, the moon is a companion to the sun, sometimes a lover, sometimes a sibling, sometimes a guardian who watches over the earth in shadow. The Inuit people tell stories of the moon spirit Aningak, who follows his sister, the sun, across the sky in a perpetual chase. The Norse had Mani, a male moon deity pursued by a wolf, destined to be devoured during the apocalypse of Ragnarok. For them, the moon was not just a symbol of light, but of fate, its movement a reminder of time's inevitable unravelling. These stories, spun in darkness, whispered under stars, served many purposes. They explained the unexplainable. They offered emotional language for grief, longing, joy, and transformation. But perhaps most importantly, they gave people a sense that they were not alone, that the moon, in all its quiet motion, was not just a stone but a spirit, that it saw what we saw, that it reflected not only sunlight, but something of ourselves. Even today, the moon is a mirror for feeling. We say people are moonstruck when overcome with love. We speak of dark sides of the moon to suggest hidden parts of ourselves. We describe intense emotional shifts as phases, and when we look up at the full moon, even in the heart of a bright city, we sometimes feel a pause, a hush, a softness, as though the stories haven't ended, as though the moon is still watching, still waiting for us to speak. Whether you believe in deities or not, it's easy to feel why the moon inspired so many myths. It appears and disappears. It changes shape. It controls the tides and seems to tug ever so gently on the mind. It's visible to everyone, but it never truly stays. It is constant but not unchanging. It is a riddle that doesn't need solving, and perhaps that's why it holds such a special place, not just in history but in emotion. We do not turn to the moon for answers, we turn to it for presence. There are some things that science can measure: mass, orbit, gravity, distance. The moon, from a scientific perspective, is a natural satellite, a dusty sphere about 1/4 the width of Earth, orbiting our planet at an average distance of 384,400 kilometres. But that's not how most people experience it. To most of us, the moon is not a number. It is a feeling. It is a painting, a poem, a melody that hums quietly in the background of our lives. It appears without asking and disappears without apology. It's never the same shape twice in a month, and yet we always know it when we see it. And because of this constant shifting presence, the moon has become one of humanity's oldest and most enduring artistic muses. Painters, poets, composers, storytellers, all have turned their gaze upward. In the swirling skies of Vincent van Gogh, the moon often hangs like a lantern of memory, suspended over quiet towns and restless fields. In his famous Starry Night, the moon is not central, but its golden curve softens the boldness of the stars. It's a witness to the artist in a landscape, an emblem of stillness amid storm. Caspar David Friedrich, the German romantic painter, often placed the moon at the heart of his compositions. His works depict solitary figures staring at the moon from hilltops, forests, or ruins. People not acting, but reflecting. The moon, in these paintings, becomes a symbol of the sublime. Vastness not just of space, but of feeling. It is both a mirror and a mystery. In music, the moon's influence is just as profound. Claude Debussy wrote Clair de Lune, French for Moonlight, a piano piece so delicate and flowing it feels like a dream you once had but can't quite remember. It doesn't describe the moon directly, but it evokes the sensation of it. Soft illumination, quiet movement, the way shadows stretch under silver light. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata carries a different tone, more brooding, more solemn. Though the name was added posthumously by a poetic critic, it stuck, and perhaps rightly so, for the piece, especially its opening movement, captures something of the moon's introspective pull. It doesn't rise, it unfolds, it doesn't declare, it confesses. Language, too, has absorbed the moon like a drop of ink spreading through water. We call someone moonstruck when they're lost in love, or in thought. A rare event is said to happen once in a blue moon. The word honeymoon comes from the idea that the sweetness of new love might only last as long as one cycle of the moon. In storytelling, the moon is a motif of longing and distance. It is unreachable yet visible. It doesn't hide, but neither does it reveal itself completely. It's no surprise that in countless tales characters speak to the moon, pray to it, or chase it as if it holds answers. Children's stories often imagine the moon as a companion, gentle and quiet, like a friend who sits with you when you can't sleep. In lullabies, it's a watcher, a guardian, a silver eye that blinks but never closes. Even in modern expressions, the moon still glows. Shoot for the moon, we say. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. A romantic promise might be, I'll give you the moon. A night full of possibility is moonlit. A strange, dreamlike quality is called lunar. The moon remains, in language, a symbol of both aspiration and ambiguity. But why does the moon inspire such depth of feeling? Perhaps it's because it never forces itself upon us. The sun commands attention, but the moon offers it. It doesn't blind, it illuminates. It doesn't warm, it calms. Its light allows for movement but invites stillness. You can walk beneath it, but more often you simply stand and watch. Its silence also plays a part. The moon says nothing, it tells no stories of its own, and so we tell ours upon it. A painter sees loneliness, a composer hears longing, a poet imagines a distant lover, a child sees a face, a scientist sees history etched in craters, a dreamer sees a path. It becomes, in every culture, in every generation, a kind of canvas, wide, patient and welcoming. There's also the matter of rhythm. The moon doesn't just appear and vanish. It grows, recedes, disappears and returns. It keeps a tempo we can follow. And in art, rhythm is everything. Whether in music, poetry or brushstrokes, rhythm gives shape to feeling. The moon, by its very presence, reminds us that nothing is static, but not everything is chaotic. Change can be graceful. Cycles can be soothing. This may be why so many lullabies are sung under its light, and why so many meditations invoke its calm. In a world that often moves too fast, the moon offers a pace we can breathe with. It does not demand belief or obedience. It simply offers a pattern, one we can ignore or embrace, one we can name or simply feel. In the end, the moon is not just a subject of art. It is a collaborator. It paints the night in gradients of grey and silver. It shapes how shadows fall, how stories begin, how melodies rise and fall. It gives space to imagination without ever intruding. It is a quiet partner in the making of beauty, and perhaps that's why it has stayed with us. Not just above us, but inside us. Not as a celestial body alone, but as something more intimate, a memory, a metaphor, a mood. Until the mid-20th century, the moon was purely a thing of imagination, emotion, and distant observation. It was the subject of legends and lullabies, the silent companion of countless lonely nights. But then, almost suddenly, we reached it. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface and said words that echoed across the world. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. In that moment, the moon shifted. It was no longer just a symbol. It became a place. But the story of our scientific relationship with the moon began long before boots touched regolith. For centuries, astronomers studied the moon's changing face. Through telescopes, they charted its craters and plains, its so-called seas, dark, flat areas formed by ancient volcanic flows. Early observers thought these might hold water. Others imagined alien civilizations. Even when the truth became clearer, the moon's surface retained its mystery. It wasn't until we began sending spacecraft that we truly began to understand its geology, history, and origin. The most influential theory today is the giant impact hypothesis, a story as dramatic as any myth. Roughly 4.5 billion years ago, not long after Earth formed, a Mars-sized body, nicknamed Theia, collided with our planet. The impact was catastrophic. Debris from the collision was flung into orbit, and over time that debris coalesced into what we now know as the Moon. It was born in fire and impact, and it has been circling us ever since. This theory was long suspected, but it wasn't confirmed until the Apollo missions brought moon rocks back to Earth. When scientists analysed the samples, they found isotopic similarities between lunar and terrestrial rocks, clues that pointed to a shared origin. The Moon, it turned out, wasn't a foreign body captured by Earth's gravity. It was part of us, torn away and reshaped. In total, 6 Apollo missions landed humans on the Moon. Each one carried scientific instruments and returned with samples that are still being studied. These missions transformed our understanding of the Moon, not just as a place, but as a record. Because the Moon has no atmosphere, no weather, and very little geological activity, it is a kind of time capsule. The surface remains largely unchanged over billions of years. Craters that formed 3 billion years ago still sit in silent testimony. The dust, the fine, glassy soil known as regolith, records every micrometeorite impact. There is no erosion, no wind to sweep it clean. By studying the Moon, we glimpse the early solar system. We see what Earth once endured and what the inner planets may have experienced before time erased the evidence. The scientific value of the Moon doesn't stop with the past. It also holds keys to the future. In recent decades, attention has turned once more to the Moon, not as a destination, but as a launch point. Future missions aim to use it as a base for deeper exploration. The Moon's gravity is just 1/6 that of Earth, making it an efficient place to launch spacecraft further into the solar system. There's also interest in using lunar resources. Water ice, found in permanently shadowed craters near the poles, could be harvested for drinking water or broken down into hydrogen and oxygen for fuel. Lunar soil might be used to build habitats, and a base on the Moon would allow us to test long-term survival in space before venturing to Mars or beyond. The Artemis program, led by NASA with international partners, aims to return humans to the Moon in the coming years. This time, the goal is not just a visit, but a sustainable presence. A station on the Moon could be humanity's first permanent step off Earth, our first experiment in living on another world. But even as science transforms the Moon into something practical, a stepping stone, a resource, a research lab, it hasn't erased the poetry. Astronauts often describe an overwhelming sense of wonder upon seeing the Earth from the Moon. A blue marble in a sea of black, fragile, alive, complete. Buzz Aldrin called the lunar surface magnificent desolation. Others have spoken of the silence, the stillness, the strangeness of standing in a place so familiar in the sky, yet so alien beneath their feet. And for those of us who haven't been there, the Moon remains a bridge between what we imagine and what we know, between ancient myth and modern science. The Moon teaches us something quietly profound, that beauty and truth can coexist, that something can be both a symbol and a surface, both a metaphor and a map. It reminds us that the boundaries between science and story are not as firm as we think. The same moon that poets once wept over now helps guide spacecraft through vacuum. The same face that inspired lullabies also holds the signatures of hydrogen isotopes. The same silver disk that lovers once reached for in verse now reflects the radar pulses of robotic probes, and none of these truths cancel the others out. Perhaps that is the moon's greatest gift to science. Not just its data, but its ability to hold meaning without being diminished by explanation. To look at the moon and say, "I understand you better now," is not to love it less. It is to love it differently. To see it not only as something that watches us, but something we can touch, explore, and learn from, and maybe, someday, even live beside. Try to imagine Earth without the moon. Not the moon simply hidden by clouds or missing for a night, but truly gone, erased from the sky and from the gravitational choreography that has unfolded quietly and faithfully for over 4 billion years. The silver companion we take for granted, its pull, its light, its timing, suddenly absent. It might seem at first that the world would carry on. The sun would still rise, the stars would still burn, the oceans would still stretch from shore to shore. But slowly, and then suddenly, things would change. Because the moon is not just decoration, it is balance. And without it, that balance would begin to fall apart. One of the moon's most important roles is stabilizing Earth's axial tilt, that slight lean of about 23.5 degrees that gives us our seasons. Without the moon's gravitational tug, Earth's axis would begin to wobble more dramatically, shifting over tens of thousands or even millions of years in unpredictable ways. It could swing from nearly upright, no seasons at all, to a chaotic 60 or even 85 degrees, where one pole bakes in continuous sunlight while the other freezes in darkness. The result? Wild climate changes. Some epochs might feel like eternal spring. Others would plunge continents into deep glaciations or turn equators into burning deserts. This isn't speculation. Mars, with no large moon to stabilize its tilt, shows signs of just such chaos. Its obliquity shifts wildly over time, swinging climate patterns like a pendulum with no clock to guide it. Without the moon, Earth could follow a similar path, a planet where stability is fleeting and habitability becomes more fragile. But the moon doesn't just anchor the tilt of our planet, it also affects the length of our days. Right now, Earth's rotation is gradually slowing, just a little, thanks to a phenomenon known as tidal friction. As the moon pulls on Earth's oceans, it creates tides that lag slightly behind its orbit. This gravitational tug-of-war creates resistance, transferring angular momentum from Earth to the moon, and pushing the moon slowly away, about 3.8 centimeters per year, while our planet's spin slows down in response. In the very distant past, Earth's day was only about 6 hours long. With the moon's help, it's now stretched to 24. Without the moon, that deceleration would vanish. Earth's days might still slow slightly due to solar tides, but at a much weaker rate. The planet might spin faster than it does now. Days could shorten, by a little or a lot, depending on when the moon disappeared. Faster rotation means stronger winds, more intense storms, and a more chaotic climate system. Not a disaster all at once, but a world constantly spinning just a bit too fast for comfort. The tides themselves would be different too. While the sun also pulls on Earth's oceans, its tidal influence is only about half as strong as the moon's. Without the moon, tides would still exist, but they would be weaker, less predictable, and more uniform. Gone would be the dramatic rise and fall that shapes coastal life. Gone would be the strong tidal flows that mix ocean waters, helping circulate nutrients and support entire ecosystems. And without those robust tides, much of life as we know it might never have arisen. Tidal pools, the small, temporary bodies of water left behind as the sea retreats, are believed to have played a crucial role in the origin of life. Their cycles of drying and rewetting created ideal environments for complex molecules to form and assemble. Without a strong lunar tide, these pools would have been rarer, quieter, and less dynamic. Evolution itself may have taken a different route, or slowed. Even marine animals that evolved long after life's origin depend on the moon's cycles. Species like coral, turtles, and many fish rely on lunar rhythms to spawn, feed, and migrate. Without the moon, entire ecosystems might develop without those triggers, or fail to develop at all. The moon's absence would even affect Earth's magnetic field, though perhaps in subtler ways. The moon's tidal pull affects the flow of molten iron in Earth's outer core, which contributes to the maintenance of the geomagnetic field. While the precise influence is still under study, it's possible that removing the moon might eventually weaken Earth's shield against solar radiation. And without that protection, the atmosphere itself might become more vulnerable, particularly over deep time. It is a cascade of effects, each subtle in isolation, but collectively transformative. A faster Earth, a darker sea, a wilder tilt, a weaker field, and yet, perhaps the most haunting consequence is not a single, catastrophic change, but the gradual drift into unfamiliarity, a world where seasons shift erratically, where animals behave without rhythm, where the night is darker, not just visually, but biologically, because many nocturnal animals rely on the moon's phases to guide their behaviour, from migration to predation. Remove the moon, and those patterns dissolve. Even for humans, the loss would be felt, not just culturally, but neurologically. Our bodies, shaped over eons in lunar light, might falter in subtle, accumulated ways. Sleep could be affected. Biological rhythms might slowly decouple from natural cycles. Over generations, the absence of that steady lunar beat could lead to changes we might never fully understand. Of course, this is all a thought experiment. The moon isn't going anywhere, not in our lifetime, nor in the likely span of human civilization. But imagining Earth without it helps us see what it truly does. The moon does not roar. It does not shout its importance, but it holds the planet steady. It slows time. It shapes the oceans. It whispers through evolution. It tells the Earth, gently and constantly, stay balanced, stay patient, stay in rhythm. Without it, the world would still turn, but it would not be the same world. Try standing outside on a clear night. Look up and imagine the sky without the moon. No crescent rising over the hills, no full circle bathing the world in soft light, no half-shadowed orb to mark the passage of weeks. Just stars, bright, yes, but distant, scattered, indifferent. Without the moon, night would lose its anchor, not just in a literal sense, but in the way it feels. The sky would become a place of glittering emptiness, a dome without its lamp, and while the absence of the moon would reshape the Earth in physical ways, altering tides, weather and biological rhythms, it would also change the human spirit in ways that are more difficult to measure. Because when we lose the moon, we don't just lose a light, we lose a language. For most of human history, the moon was not merely something to observe, it was something to feel. It offered continuity. No matter what was happening in your life, no matter the kingdom or century, the moon would return. You could count on it. Children looked at the same moon as their grandparents. Sailors in far seas felt comforted by its presence. Poets, across centuries and continents, found in it a symbol that never aged. Without the moon, that thread of shared experience would unravel. There would be no mid-autumn moon festivals, no nights lit by its silver hush, no myths to explain its phases, because there would be no phases at all. Even the very idea of phases, of things returning but changed, might not exist in our culture. A sky without the moon is a sky without a story. Would we have invented other stories to take its place? Of course. Humans are nothing if not imaginative. We would have turned to the stars, perhaps, or invented symbols rooted in fire, in trees, in tides alone. But they wouldn't feel the same. The moon is not just a symbol, it's a presence. Constant enough to be trusted, but varied enough to be interesting. A perfect metaphor for life itself. Moonlight shaped how we lived too. Before electricity, the moon was our only reliable nightlight. On full moon nights, people could travel safely, tend to animals or gather with neighbours. On new moon nights, When the sky was truly dark, stories took on a different tone. Superstitions grew, spirits stirred. The moon wasn't just marking time, it was mood lighting for civilization. Take that away, and our relationship to the night would be different. More fearful, perhaps, more confined. Our early ancestors may have been more hesitant to wander after dusk with no moon to guide them. Entire patterns of work, socialization and ritual could shift under a truly dark sky. Even language would feel emptier. So many words we take for granted, moonstruck, moonlit, honeymoon, lunacy, would either vanish or mean something else entirely. Phrases like once in a blue moon or over the moon would never be coined. The soft vocabulary of longing and rhythm would lose its grounding. Without the moon, human emotion might have needed to find new metaphors, and they might have been sharper, less luminous, less forgiving. But perhaps most poignant of all is the psychological gap that would be left behind. Even today, with our skies dimmed by city lights, many people find themselves pausing when they see the moon. They take photos of it rising over the skyline. They send messages. Did you see the moon tonight? They sit by windows a little longer, walk a little slower, feel somehow more connected. Not because of what the moon is, but because of what it suggests. The moon reminds us that we are not alone, that something ancient is watching with calm detachment, that we are part of a cycle, that there is beauty in return. Without it, that quiet companionship would disappear. And even if the moon had never existed, the absence would still be felt. Not consciously, perhaps. We wouldn't miss what we'd never had, but something subtle and soft would be missing from the human emotional palette, like a note in a song that was never played, but should have been. Would we dream as vividly? Would we reflect as often? Would we look up as much? It's not just about what the moon gives us. It's about what it allows. It allows contemplation, stillness, wonder. It invites you to slow down, not out of fear, but out of reverence. It is not the brightest light, but it is the most patient. And in a world that moves faster every day, that patience matters. Take away the moon, and you take away a mirror. One that doesn't show your face, but your thoughts. A quiet surface that reflects the things you didn't realize you were carrying. There's a kind of emotional architecture that the moon builds in us. Quiet halls of longing, of memory, of time that folds in on itself. Without the moon, those rooms might never be built. Or if they were, they would be dimmer, less inhabited, less frequented by dreams. So yes, we might adapt. We might write poems about the stars instead. We might light candles and create festivals to other celestial rhythms. But the gentle emotional gravity of the moon would be missing. Not gone, because it never arrived. And the sky would be darker, not in light, but in meaning. Even as the moon seems unchanging in our skies, rising, falling, waxing, waning, it is not frozen in time. Like everything in the universe, it is slowly drifting, shifting, evolving. But it does so with such subtlety, such quiet patience, that we barely notice. The truth is, the moon is leaving us. Not quickly, not dramatically, but step by step, like a loved one walking slowly backward into the dark. Each year the moon drifts about 3.8 centimetres farther from Earth, roughly the rate at which fingernails grow. This motion is caused by tidal friction, a delicate exchange of momentum. As the moon pulls on Earth's oceans, those same oceans tug back, ever so slightly, transferring energy and pushing the moon outward. It's a soft motion. In 1,000,000 years, the moon will have moved about 38 kilometres farther away. In 100 million years, nearly 4,000 kilometres. It's hard to notice now. But in the far future, this drift will reshape one of the most spectacular phenomena we can see from Earth: total solar eclipses. Right now, the moon is just the right size and just the right distance to perfectly cover the sun during a solar eclipse. The sun's diameter is about 400 times larger than the moon's, but the moon is also about 400 times closer. This cosmic coincidence allows the sun and moon to appear the same size in the sky. It's what makes total eclipses possible, when the moon passes between Earth and the sun and for a few brief minutes turns day into night. The sky darkens, birds go silent, a hush spreads across the land, and then, just as quickly, the light returns. But as the moon drifts away, that perfect alignment will slowly be lost. In about 600 million years, still unimaginably distant but inevitable, total solar eclipses will cease. The moon will no longer appear large enough to cover the sun entirely. Only partial and annular eclipses will remain. The great curtain of shadow will never fall in full again. Future creatures, if they exist, may marvel at the ancient records we leave behind. Videos, photographs, written accounts of what it once felt like to stand in the path of totality. For them, eclipses will be different. Less dramatic, perhaps, less mysterious. They will still be beautiful, but they will not be the same. And yet, as the moon moves away, Earth changes too. Our planet's rotation continues to slow. Right now, a day is about 24 hours, but in the past it was shorter. When the dinosaurs roamed the Earth, days were closer to 23 hours long. In the deep future, Earth's rotation will slow even more. Days will stretch to 25, 30, even 40 hours or more. Eventually, given enough time, billions of years, Earth and the moon could become tidally locked, just as the moon is to us now. This means that the same side of Earth would always face the moon, and vice versa. One hemisphere would see the moon hanging forever in the sky, never rising or setting. The other would never see it at all. Of course, this tidal locking is a slow process, and there are obstacles. Long before that future arrives, our sun will change dramatically. In about 5 billion years, it will enter its red giant phase, swelling to engulf the inner planets. Earth may be scorched, melted, or swallowed entirely. The moon could be consumed as well, or if Earth is destroyed, it may drift off into space cold and alone, a silent witness to a vanished world. But let's imagine it survives. Imagine, if you will, a time long after humans are gone. Long after trees, oceans, birds and buildings, perhaps even long after Earth has faded from the cosmos. But the moon remains, a battered sphere still orbiting an invisible path scarred by craters, wrapped in silence. In this vision, the moon becomes a memorial, a place where traces of our curiosity might linger, the footprints of Apollo astronauts, undisturbed for millennia, the descent stages of landers, reflectors placed to measure its distance, perhaps even future lunar habitats long abandoned but still intact. To whatever intelligence might come next, be it machine, alien, or something we cannot yet imagine, the moon could be a kind of message, a whisper that once, in the arms of this gentle satellite, a species dreamed, explored, and reached upward. The moon would not answer. It never has, but it would still be there, holding those stories. And for us now, in the present moment, knowing that the moon is changing does not take away its meaning. In fact, it may add to it. The knowledge that eclipses are a temporary gift, that the moon is drifting slowly away, lends a certain fragile wonder to what we see tonight. That full moon hovering outside your window, it's a little farther than it was last year. It will never be quite that close again. And yet, it returns. It lights your walk. It bends the ocean. It pulls at your thoughts. The moon's leaving is not a betrayal. It's simply a part of time. And if anything, it teaches us how to love something that is both constant and changing. To hold close what cannot be held forever. To say goodbye, even as it remains. Somewhere above you right now, whether the sky's clear or clouded, the moon is there. It may be a sliver or a disk, full or hidden, but it's there, silent, steady, ancient, just as it has always been. Maybe you saw it earlier, this evening, pale and low on the horizon, like a thought that had not quite formed. Or perhaps you'll see it tomorrow, climbing higher, casting light that doesn't dazzle but calms, light that has brushed over pyramids and poems, over oceans and empty fields, light that doesn't ask for attention but is always willing to offer it. The moon has been with us since long before memory, before the first campfire was lit, before the first name was spoken, before there were stories, there were shadows cast by moonlight. It guided the sea before we could swim, pulled on shorelines before we had maps. It rocked the earth like a cradle, slowing its spin, shaping its climate, carving the rhythm of days and nights. It helped life begin quietly. It helped it evolve softly. It pulled tides and stirred weather, but never shouted. And still, it's there. You too have seen it through many phases, not just in the sky, but in yourself. Maybe you remember standing in a backyard or a balcony or on the edge of a quiet road, staring up at it. Maybe it was with someone you loved. Maybe you were alone. Maybe you were small, wondering why it followed the car on the drive home. Or maybe you noticed it just last week, caught in the branches of a tree like a glowing fruit the world had forgotten to pick. The moon has been a calendar, a clock, a symbol, a mirror. It has marked time in months and moods. It has appeared in lullabies and legends, in music and in silence. Even when you didn't notice it, it was there, pulling the tide of your thoughts in slow silver arcs. And whether it remains beside Earth for another billion years or slowly drifts into the dark, the moon will always belong to you, because it shaped not just the world, but the way you see the world. So let the moon hold you now. Let its gravity, soft and constant, guide your thoughts towards stillness. The same way it draws water to shore, it draws the restlessness from your limbs, the spinning of your mind, the worry that clings at the edges of the day. Let it pull you into rhythm, waxing with breath, waning with thought, falling gently toward rest. There's no need to chase sleep. It will come. As the moon rises without being asked, so too will sleep find you. Not all at once, but slowly, like tide returning. You may be lying under a bright moon tonight, or a new moon, invisible but still there. You may live where its light paints snow in silver, or where it falls like a haze through humid air. But wherever you are, you share it, with others who look up and wonder, with past lives and future ones. Someone across the world sees the same moon. Someone long gone saw it too. Someone not yet born will see it again. In that way, the moon isn't just a satellite, it's a bridge, a glowing thread between minds, between moments, a soft reminder that you're not separate from the world, you're part of its rhythm, you're one more pattern in its dance. So sleep, little moon child, under the light that shaped the tides, under the same face that watched the first fish wriggle toward shore, under the soft gaze that saw the first fires flicker in caves, under the silver curve that inspired songs, calendars, and kisses. You're not alone in the dark. You're wrapped in a story as old as time, and it is still being told every night the moon returns. Even now, as your breath slows, as your body settles, the moon drifts a little farther in the sky. But it hasn't left you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Rest easy beneath it. Let the sky hold your thoughts. Let the moon keep its gentle watch. Let the rhythm of your body fall into step with the rhythm of the tides and the rhythm of sleep. And when morning comes, whether the moon has set or still lingers pale in the daylight, it will have been there the whole time, watching, waiting, whispering to your dreams. So good night, wherever you are. Thank you for wandering through this quiet orbit with me. Sleep well beneath the moon we share.